Hi, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use Entity Framework in ASP.NET MVC6. I'm going to specify code first in this video. What that means is you're going to build your project, build your class, and then from there create a database in Azure using that class. This is one of two ways to use Entity Framework. The other way is database first, and I'll do that in a separate video. Okay, so what I have is a basic MVC ASP project built. It doesn't do much. It's just got your vanilla setup. So the tool we're going to use is Entity Framework, now known as EFCore. It's a collection of tools that simplifies the connection between ASP and a database. I've chosen to use Azure because, hey, everybody's in the cloud these days. So you see just basic vanilla. What we'll do is we'll install NuGet packages, we'll build classes, then we'll migrate to the database. And then after that, then we'll build some forms that interact with those. Okay, let's start with the NuGet packages. Okay, so we need to install three things from Entity Framework. We need Entity Framework Core Design, Entity Framework Core SQL Server, and Entity Framework Tools, these three. These two right here. So click on them, pick, make sure it matches the version you've installed. I've installed version 6, so I'm good. So that was design. We'll get SQL Server. If you pick the wrong version, it won't let you install. It'll yell at you. And we now see these three are installed. Notice I installed them for the full project. We only have one project in here, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so those give you the ability to connect to SQL Server, use tools like migration and the Entity Framework tools, and this allows you to play with design and components. Now, if you don't want to use SQL Server, you can use something else. That's fine. I'm just a SQL Server person. I've been doing it for years. Okay. We'll now create our classes. And as usual, we'll do these in models. New class. I'm going to do a simple order process. I'm calling it EF order for Entity Framework order just so we can see that these pop up in my database. Each database table in each class will have to have a key, a primary key. If you design databases, and you probably have heard the phrase, all tables should have a primary key. To support that, we're going to use the data annotations. Oops, I need to put that above the namespace. So we're going to use the data annotations. And then I'm going to have a key. And my first and you use whatever data types you want. I'm using the prop macro here. Oh, it helps me. I want that to be order date. Okay, so here's our first table. Order ID will be my primary key. This annotation of key sets it as primary key. I'm now going to build a second one. that works in this using a foreign key. We call this EFOrder detail. Again, add the same data annotations. Got a little confused there for a second, excuse me. Obviously, you use whatever data types you want. I'm going to create a little link here between these two tables. So I'm actually going to insert an order object right here. So it'll act like a primary or a foreign key. All right, so now that we have this, now we need to connect to Portal and get our connection string. You're going to connect to portal.azure.com and get to your database. You're going to then click on Show Database Connection Strings. Now, reality, you're going to need to create a separate user for this. I'm probably just going to use my default user today. Okay, so this is your connection string. I'm going to block this out in the video. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to hang on to that in a notepad document or something. Where it says your password, you're going to replace it with your password, whatever username you wish. You also have to make sure that when you go to your database, when you go to your firewall settings, up here in Set Server Firewall, make sure you include your public IP address or else this won't work. So I'm going to hang on to that notepad. Okay, so we're going to create our context. This is what connects the database. In Models, create a new class. I'm going to call it Azure Context. That's what I'm connecting to. And we're going to inherit this from DB Context. Might need to do an import. Yeah. So this inherits all the stuff that Entity Framework Core gives us. And inside here, we need to create entities for each table you wish to migrate. I want to make sure I name them as I want. I'm going to call it EFOrder details and EFOrder. What you name them here will become the table names in Azure and vice versa. We're going to add a new function in here. We use DB Context Options Builder. And you're going to put your connection string in here. Make sure you put your password in here, lose the curly braces. I'm going to have to do this off screen. That's where you put your password in, and then we'll continue on. You don't need any quotes or anything around it. Now, unfortunately, this password is stored in your file in plain text. There are ways to protect that. Okay, so I have it. I've saved it. Pretty sure I saved it. And now we're going to make the change. Making the change is called a migration. Every time you change your database, whether you do it here in your code or up in Azure, you need to run a migration. So I'm going to go down to the terminal. I might as well do the package manager console. That works. I apologize for the small font, but you're going to type add -migration and give it a name. And I called it first EF Connect. Let it do its thing. And you see there, to undo that, you can use remove migration. That'll take it out. If you screw up a username or a password, this won't work. I'll then update the database in Azure. Build succeeded. Again, if you screw up a username and password, these will not work. This migration gets applied. I'll go take a look at, oops, wrong one. Go look at SSMS. Here's my table before. I do refresh. Tables. Tables are there. They weren't there a minute ago. They are now. Okay, so right now we have a problem. Everything works, but moving forward, nothing's going to work because our connection string is unsafe. So what we need to do is we need to protect it. It's currently in their context. We need to move it out of the context and put it into startup.cs. All right, so we're going to have to protect this. Now, currently, the connection string is in the Azure context file we created, but we need to move it. So we're going to have to move it to startup. So we see here our Azure context. Now I've hidden my password for now. I need to go to my Solution Explorer. I need to open up Program CS. Okay, so we're going to need to modify this. We also have to add in something to our program from NuGet. So we go back up to NuGet Package Manager. And we need to make sure we've added an entity framework core. That's not something we added before. So make sure you add this one in as well. So Microsoft Entity Framework Core needs to be installed. Then we go to Program CS. We need to add a couple lines of code, and we need to comment some stuff in Azure context. So back in Azure context, comment out your existing. Once this works, delete it. So I just commented out for now, but once this works, you want to nuke this because this file is visible across the web. I need to create a constructor. This constructor will accept the options I'm going to pass in through my program.cs. Remember, you're going to want to get this, actually physically get that out of there. So I put in a notepad document so I don't lose it. Okay, so we're now going to go back to Program CS. Program CS is the old startup.cs. So if you come across some old documentation online and it says startup, this is where startup moved to. So I need to import these two tools. Models from your current project, EFCode first videos, name my project, and you need Microsoft Entity Framework Core. So now we're going to add my services here. So add controllers with views is what basically gives you MVC. We're now going to create a variable for our constructor just because it's easier to work with. And we're going to put a password in there, or rather a connection string in there. I've got that into another file, so I'm going to copy and paste it over. And we're going to use that. This can use that constructor we built. Okay, so I'm going to put my real password here in a moment and pull it off screen to do that. And then when run, I should run without issue. Okay, my password's in. I save. I'm going to X just so I don't. So I leave it. I'll leave it up in just in case. And then I'm going to run this thing, and I should connect. No errors. All right, life is good. No errors. All right, let's finish this up. We need to create some forms. Go to our Solution Explorer. We're going to add our controllers. So I'm going to right-click my controllers here. I'm going to select MVC controllers with views using Entity Framework. I'm going to add. I'm going to pick whichever one I care about. I'm going to do EFOrder to start. Azure context. Layout page should use your existing layout. That's fine. Hit add. Give it a moment. I'll do the same thing with EFUs. Scaffolding's worth the wait. It's generating about 1,000 lines of code for us, including a form. So we now have a new controller called EFOrders controller. I'll do the same thing for the other one. Add a controller using Entity Framework. Order detail. Azure context stays in there. This particular tool is sticky. So we now have controllers for EFOrders and EFOrder details. Let's run it and see what happens. Obviously, I need to put some links in here for this. So if you look, I have create, delete, details, edit, index. Let's take a look at the index. So EFOrders, spell it right. Boom, it takes us to here. We do create new. It takes us to a create page. I'm going to do customer 42, employee number 1. We'll put today's date in here. I'm going to create, and it's here. And now the really cool part. There it is. So with almost minimal effort, we have a form that writes to a database from our ASP MVC page. All right, thanks for listening, and good luck to you.